Morning, everybody. Let me take a second to figure out the clicker. Yeah, okay. Right, so good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Spencer. I'm going to give you guys a brief talk about the state of Africa's internet exchange point industry and ecosystem. This is my first NANOG, so I'll spend a minute just briefly introducing myself. I am a director, or the executive director of the Uganda Internet Exchange. I'm also representing here, for example, the African IXP Association. And through that, I'm on the board of the Internet Exchange Federation. I'm also on the side working to try to develop the regional multiplayer internet gaming ecosystem in Africa. So if anybody's interested in that, please catch me on the sidelines. So the African Internet Exchange Association is what you would expect. It's a group of regional internet exchange point operators collaborating for mutual benefit. We're a member of the Internet Exchange Federation, which I briefly mentioned before. So that's a collection of EuroIX, LACIX, AFIX, APIX. As far as I'm aware, North America doesn't have an IX association, but if there's any rumblings of one, please let me know. We were launched in 2012 at the Africa Peering and Interconnection Forum in Johannesburg. We currently have 45 internet exchange points in the African region, in 41 cities and 33 countries. So there's a number of countries that now have more than one, and sometimes provided by competing operators. We host biannual meetings at the Africa Internet Summit and the Africa Peering and Interconnection Forum, which we organize and host every year. Our next meeting is going to be in Rwanda. So please join us if you're interested in the region and internet exchanges and peering. It's a meeting much like this. And of course, we also research and publish data about our region, and that's some of what I'm going to show you today. Our region in particular over the past 10 years has experienced some rather extreme transitions in growth. And so what we try to do through this benchmark survey that we issue to our members is try to get a sense of what the trends are. And so we've been doing this since about 2015, and then we had some good data from before that in 2008 that you'll see throughout this presentation. And we generally get about a 65% response rate, so there's definitely some margin of error. But we get a different mixture of responses each year, and we've also incorporated some third-party sources to try to fill in some gaps that we had between 2008 and 2015 when we started doing this. So this chart shows the number of exchanges overall in Africa, starting from 1996 when Jinx was launched in South Africa. You can see for a long time until around 2010 or 11, there was some growth, but things really picked up when we started organizing the Africa Peering and Interconnection Forum, and then the Internet Society and the Africa Union got involved in developing internet exchanges around 2012 through the Axis project. This chart shows the traffic. You can see it's been a pretty steep climb. In 2008, when Machuki did a survey of our region, we only had 160 megabits going through all exchanges in Africa and the region. And today, by our conservative estimates, we have over 700 gigabits. And it's likely much higher than that right now. You can see there's a couple different data sets. It's hard to actually get a figure of what these are. So that was manually collected data in the green on the left. The blue is data collected by the European Internet Exchange Association, which we're very grateful for. And you can see that there's a discrepancy, for example, in 2015 between our data and theirs. And just to kind of illustrate some of the challenges we face in capturing data accurately, the difference there was that we did not have an exchange in our data that was being used as an international gateway by one of the countries in our region, and so that accounted for a huge amount of traffic. So this is the distribution of traffic. You can see that approximately half of internet exchanges carry less than 1 gigabit per second. That's the bottom green line. And then as you go up, increasing levels of traffic. So there are some exchanges that are disproportionately larger in terms of traffic volume, but in small numbers. The largest in our sample in 2018 was 480 gigabits, which right now is actually much larger than that. So things are growing fast. This is the aggregate number of connections to exchanges in the region. Of course, this is also going up and to the right. We didn't have any data between 2009 and 2014. The more interesting bit here is the distribution. So approximately half of exchanges had between 10 and 50 connections, which is quite good despite the low traffic levels, because I think that shows some potential for growth, because when you have a lot of connections and ASNs at an exchange, that's what, in my view, creates gravity, and then more will come. The largest had 302, so we've got an exchange in the region that has over 300 connections. And that's generally the number of networks they have, not ports, so it's quite large. The membership distribution in the region has changed significantly over the last approximately 10 years. In the old days, when internet exchanges were in their infancy in our region, we had a lot of ISPs, well, almost exclusively ISPs connected to internet exchanges. And now today you can see that we've got a very healthy mixture of mobile network operators, content networks, academic networks, banking, and other enterprise. And as a result, governance models have had to evolve as well. In the early days, it made sense to have ISPA, Internet Service Provider Association, run internet exchange points because they were the only guys connected. They were the only major networks in town. That's the blue. But then over time, that model became unrepresentative as the diversity of the membership increased. And so you started to see more neutral nonprofit internet exchanges, which is in the red. And then over time, other types of exchanges, like government-run exchanges in the yellow, and for-profit exchanges, as we call them, in the dark red. And when I say for-profit in the context of this presentation, what I mean is a data center that owns and operates an exchange. Right, so the exchange itself is not for-profit. It might be offered for free, but it's owned and operated by a for-profit colo provider. So we tried to dig into the data and actually figure out some other interesting statistics related to this. And we noted that government-run internet exchanges had the lowest annual growth rates by far. On average, 91 megabits growth per year and one network. On the opposite side of the spectrum, these for-profit IXP colo model exchanges we're experiencing the most rapid growth at around 20 gigs per year. Internet exchanges in Africa are formalizing. We've got about 75% of them now that require contracts to join. That was not the case not too long ago. And some even offer service level agreements, although that's still a minority. In terms of service fees, what you'll find in the region is that a growing number of internet exchanges have implemented sustainability models or commercial models, depending on their context. In the chart on the left, you can see in dark green, that's the number of exchanges that are charging fees, starting in 2015 on the left. And then the light green is the ones that planned to charge fees at the time that we conducted that survey, and then the gray area are exchanges that had no plans to charge fees. And those were typically the for-profit exchanges that were offered as a free exchange service by a for-profit colo provider. They didn't need to charge fees because they made it up on the rack space. And most exchanges are charging port fees, but a lot of them also charge annual membership fees. And some still operate only on membership fees, but we see that evolving towards a port fee model because that's a bit more scalable. A lot of internet exchanges in our region rely on donations, of course. About 60% receive recurring donations, typically in the form of rack space, internet transit, and power. Some also get donated legal services and payroll, depending on their funding model. The hardware donations are typically switches, servers, power equipment, what you might expect. And also, it's worth mentioning that 20% of IXPs have received grant funding in the last 12 months. So there's still a lot of active donor funding to try to develop the internet exchange ecosystem in our region. So this is the peering policy over time at internet exchanges in our region. So on the left, you have 2008, and then there's kind of a big jump to 2015. But what this shows is whether you're going to be forced to peer with all other networks at the exchange, or whether you can bilaterally peer, or if they offer route service, et cetera. So in the orange on the left, back in 2008, that's mandatory multilateral peering. So if you showed up at an exchange point in 2008 in Africa, there was a good chance that you were going to be forced to peer with all the other networks, which, of course, as we know, discourages networks from coming in the first place. And I think people discovered that over time, and what we've seen in the green is that multilateral peering policies at exchanges won out. In other words, you can connect to the exchange. We've got a route server for you, but you can also just bilaterally peer with whoever you want. It's up to you. And so thankfully, we've seen that model take off over time. We still do have some layer 3 exchanges in the region, which are router in the middle instead of switch, but we're trying to hammer them down. There's a lot of exchanges now in our region that have full-time paid staff, which is a dramatic difference from the past. We haven't put together graphs that show this stuff over time, but currently about half of internet exchanges have full-time staff, and half are paid. So there's different mixtures of each. Oddly, even though you would expect that all full-time staff are paid, that's not always the case. There's a lot of value-added services showing up at exchanges. Of course, network monitoring systems, DNS root servers are common now, which is, that's exploded a lot. There were only about 25% of exchanges in our region that had DNS root servers in 2008, and now there's about 66%. But we've also seen customer portals show up, which is a bit more advanced, thanks to software like IXP Manager, which INEX and the guys over in Ireland have put together. The facilities are getting better and more neutral. So this slide shows in the blue, the neutrality of the facilities that internet exchanges are in. Back in 2008, a lot of these internet exchanges were in carrier facilities, for example, because there just weren't a lot of carrier neutral DCs or otherwise neutral facilities that they could go in. So if they were in neutral facilities, they tended to be in like a broom closet somewhere, or the government might have offered space in their building. But as you can see over time, facilities that we consider reliably neutral have increased, and the number of explicitly non-neutral facilities, typically carrier-owned, have decreased, and you can see the breakdown on the right. So in the blue, of course, on the right, you've got carrier-neutral DC, and then the lighter blues are academic, and then IXP-owned facilities, because in some cases they rent or own themselves. The red is the carriers, and the gray are ones that we're not really sure of the neutrality. But still, your mileage may vary. You could be in a market where there's a carrier-neutral DC with an exchange inside, but you might have a non-neutral metro fiber situation or whatever. So there's still a lot of tricks to getting to exchanges in some cases. Facilities are improving, of course, as people move into better facilities and carrier-neutral DCs pop up in the region, more fire suppression, video surveillance, security, etc. So your kit is safer than ever these days. And that's it. That's just a broad overview of what's going on in our region. So if anybody's interested, I have time for questions. I think I moved through that quite quickly. Or you can catch me on the sidelines. No questions? All right, thank you very much.